So we're going to start by sewing the side seams. And my suggestion to you is this. The waist is a little bit tight, so take the side seams at 1 1/8. Okay, do the side seams at 1 1/8 rather than at 1. Okay? And if you've chalked them or anything, all you do is line up your presser foot along the chalk. So make sure your stitch length is at 2. Take a few stitches, reverse, and slowly and carefully sew all the way down the side seam. You have a couple marks on the skirt, meaning you have a notch for the hip, and you have a notch for the hem, which is at 2 inches above. So slowly and carefully, we're going to go all the way down, and we're going to reverse at the ends. So you're going to repeat that on both side seams. I'm also going to right now demonstrate one of the darts, okay? And of course you have 4 darts on the front and 4 darts on the back. So if you pick up one of your darts, and what I like to do, I like to finger press it on the center line. If your darts are not clear or not clearly marked, it's really important that you always have the arms of the darts marked, and very important that you have the stop point marked, because then you know where to stop. So these are nicely marked and very clear. So if you finger press on the center line, and then you can go press it with the iron, you can use one side to follow it. If they're not clear, how I mark darts very often is I just notch the 3 notches, and then I carry 3 colored pencils in my sewing bag, a yellow, a turquoise, and a lavender. And they're generally good for any color fabric. And I draw them with a very, very, very fine colored pencil. This will never wash out. A pencil will wash out, and you can get a fine, crisp, clean line. So take a few stitches at the beginning of the dart, reverse, and then slowly and carefully you're going to sew towards the apex. And when you come to the apex, the last stitch essentially is off the dart. You're making a perfect triangle, really. And the last point should be just off the fabric. Pull it out, and what didn't I do? I didn't backstitch, because what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take the dart and take the thread and knot it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to clip it. Okay? And I'm going to leave about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch tail. Why don't you come over to the iron with me, and then I'm going to show you the side seam. Okay, so turn it on, and I am running the presser foot along the stitch line. So the left edge of the presser foot is along the stitch line. So essentially what I'm going to be left with is probably about a 1/2 inch, okay? And as you know, it's going to cut as it goes. So slowly and carefully sew the side seam. And it's overlocked together. Now, I would not recommend overlocking a skirt together if it's for you, if you anticipate needing to alter it. But in terms of this skirt, it's great to overlock it together. There's no reason to leave 1 inch seam allowance on either side. You would and I would never leave 1 inch. I might leave a 1/2 inch or 5/8 so you could alter it a bit. And it depends, of course, on the fabric and the thickness of the fabric. But we top stitch the skirt, so you need to overlock the seams together in order to top stitch it. Okay, let's go to the iron. I'm going to press the side seam towards the back, okay? And then we're going to top stitch from the right side. So I'm going to give the skirt a little bit of a tug So I'm pressing right on the seam. Okay, and then I'm going to go from the right side and press again. Be careful that your fabric doesn't get a shine if it gets pressed from the right side, or you would have to use a press cloth. But generally with a cotton, you won't have that. It's more like a wool gabardine will shine. And you want to make sure the seam is pressed to the back really crisply, and there's no creases along the seam, right? Okay, we're good? Mm-hmm. Now the darts. It's really important to press the darts properly and crisply, and do it as you're sewing, okay? So here's my front, and I call this the underlay or the shadow, and I would assume that's what your draping teacher calls it. And as you know from draping, the dart gets pressed towards the front, towards center front in the front, towards center back in the back. So I'm going to press it pretty crisply towards the front, and just making sure I don't get a little tuck at the bottom. And from the right side, that looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's why you want to be really careful that the last stitch is off the fabric, and that's how you get it so there's no like tuck there. Okay? So, now we're going to top stitch it. Top stitching is a little bit of a personal preference, how far you want it top stitched from the edge. Some people use a little bit longer stitch for top stitching, and I'm talking in general in terms of design. Some people like a contrast stitch. I wouldn't use a contrast stitch till you're pretty comfortable about your sewing because it shows really well. And generally I like it about 2 1/4, so a tiny bit longer than a little regular stitch. And sometimes if I'm really doing this for a skirt, it's nice to use a slightly heavier thread because then it shows. But for this, I'm just doing my regular thread. I'm running my seam down the center of my right presser foot leg, I guess if this is a leg. And what I mean by that is you always want to have your eye on a particular spot that you're looking at the fabric. So I'm very conscious that that seam is going towards the center of this. Never focus on the needle. If you focus on the needle, you're too late. Okay? So I'm running it down the center like that. So however far you want your top stitch from the seam, let's say I wanted it this far over, then I would keep my eye with the seam along the side right here, okay? So all I'm saying is be consistent, and be consistent on both sides, okay? Make sure you have your 2 threads, take a few stitches, reverse, and slowly and carefully sew down the seam. And this is why you want it nicely pressed when you get it under the needle. It's about 1/8. Yeah, I'd say it's 1/8. That's what I like. If you want to do it a little further and see, everybody has their own sense of what looks pretty. So that's it.